So I want to start obviously with the natural place is acting. So by my research, you started acting when you were 13, right?
Sure. Yeah, that's where it all started.
And then so like when and or why did you get into acting?
So it wasn't a case of why, it was a case of how I ended up falling into it, to be quite honest with you. I was never really academic in school. School didn't really interest me, not because I wasn't clever. It was always disappointing for my parents being in, speaking to my teachers saying, your child has great potential, but unfortunately he's just a class clown. As I said, it's never really interested me, man. And then I ended up in drama. I really enjoyed drama. It was hands-on. It was, I don't know, it just felt a place where I could be myself without being in trouble. And I could be that clown, I guess. But the more I got into drama, I think it was an opportunity for my drama teacher to see that it was something that I was actually really good at. And as an audition came along for this program called Waterloo Road. And as you said, it was the nation's most watched series at the time. And all my friends watched it, but I never really watched it. And then before you know it, man, I managed to land the part, and my world was turned upside down.
That's awesome. So was Waterloo Road then your first role?
Yeah, it took out getting thrown in the deep end, right?
Wow, that's crazy. So like you said it was the most watched show at the time, but can you like contextualize like how popular it was like in terms of like from going as someone just in school one day but then having a role in Waterloo Road the next? Like how big a deal was that?
It was great because, first of all, I didn't have to go to school classes anymore. I had a private tutor on set, and I used to play Roller Coaster Tycoon and tell him it's for graphic design. So I never stopped being that clown. But to give you a bit of context to how big the show was, I remember once I used to have to wear hat and glasses everywhere so I didn't get recognised. And my friends can vouch for that. I think one point where I realised how big this was is one day I was in a train station, and there must have been a school trip or something at the time. Um, and I remember just walking to my train with about three or four of my friends. And someone from a school recognized who I was off the show. And before I knew it, pretty much the whole train station had flocked around me. And we had to get train security to come on the platform and escort me onto my train. And we had to lock off a carriage just to get me away.
That's insane.
Ridiculous.
Wow. And so like your character on the show was Denzil Kelly. Can you kind of tell us about who that character was?
Sure. So there's different families in Waterloo Road, and a lot of the families tied in with the students to give more to the story. But there's a new family that were put in this show that were a deprived family from a rough estate. My sister's called Sambuca. It's the name of a liquor, for God's sake. I was called Denzil, and we were just all rascals. Denzil's main problem was not that he intended to be a bad person, but he was just naive and very vulnerable. And he always ended up in the wrong situations at the wrong time. And for most of the time, it was influenced by my older brother. And one of my first scenes, he gave me his gun in school. And I ended up getting caught with it, just to get a bit of context of the type of situations they ended up in.
I was actually going to ask you about that scene because I went and I found that scene on YouTube and I watched it. Like that was a pretty intense scene as a kid to film, I'm guessing.
Yeah, imagine, right? You've never acted in your life. You end up on a film set with people that you recognize. The next thing, one of your first ever scenes is you've got a real gun. You've got a guy there that's telling me how to hold the gun, what not to do, what I should be doing. And then I've got a director telling me that, a squad team are around the school. I could hear the sirens. I can see some of them. They've got assault rifles. They're telling me that they're going to be bursting into this room in a minute. Then I've got the head teacher that's going to try and get the gun off me. Like, I didn't have to act scared, but I was scared.
That's awesome. Like that's so intense though. Like and you were 13 at the time, right?
13.
Wow, that's crazy. But then so you talked about like how you didn't really have to go to school anymore. It's like what was your schedule like then when you were shooting the show?
So I started when I was 13. So it was compulsory for me to do education at the time. So if I wasn't in school, I had to make up for my school hours on set, right? But the problem was when I was in school, it was worse because I was popping into classes, not knowing what day I was going to be on or what hour. It was hard for teachers to keep up with the curriculum so they know what work they give me. So they were just giving me any odd work. So the work that was actually being given wasn't relevant to what I was doing. And that's where I just fell out more out of love with the educational system. because not only was it not helping me at the time I was actually there, but then also that when I was actually filming, I was getting work that wasn't relevant to what I was doing when I was actually in class. So it just ended up a complete mess, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. But so like then with the fact that you were on the show and everything, did teachers take it easy on you because of that?
Okay, so it's funny you say that actually, because I was never really, as I said, I was never academic anyway. I was always the class clown. So I wasn't on the teacher's best side. And one day I remember I was in class and the deputy head teacher came in and something had happened. I can't remember the incident. And he turned around to me in front of everybody in the class. And he said, Reece, if you carry on with this behavior, I'll be taking you out of that TV show and you won't be doing it anymore. And because obviously of the person I was and how humiliated I was at the time by that comment in front of all my friends, I turned around to him and said, well, you can stop talking about me being part of this school and I'll just leave the school and go somewhere else. How about that? so so by that point he was like, right, okay, get out of the class. It was a big mistake because he was the person that had to give me permission to go on the TV show. And it was hard because the schedules always changed. It was like my mum had to ring and say, hey, can you have this time off? Can you have this time off? So when he said that and I said that back, that probably wasn't the best comment to make.
I mean, that's pretty fair. Were all teachers like that? Or I think I heard you tell a story somewhere where a teacher actually asked you for a photo because you were on the show.
Yeah, I mean, that happened. It's, you know, the teacher had children that weren't part of the school, like dinner ladies and stuff, that would ask me for pictures. I remember walking around school. Sometimes, you know, I would have my school hour and people like kids, certainly like year sevens, newbies in the school that hadn't seen me but had heard I'm in the school, would often flock me at lunch and stuff asking for pictures. You know, sometimes I'd spend my lunch in the actual teachers, in the teacher's room, just to get away from it all. It was a bit crazy.
So how did you handle all that? Like that level of celebrity so young where people are like flocking to you at lunchtime when you're when you can't even take a train normally. Like how did you handle that whole part of being an actor?
Well, you know what? It's because I was so young. So, you know, from 13 to 16, I've got to give all credit to my mum. She was my chaperone on set. She looked after me. Obviously, I wasn't old enough to be on set on my own. So rather than hire um, what they call it, a chaperone, it was my mum that did it for me. And she really kept my feet on the ground, to be quite honest with you, financially, also in life as well. She really did guide me, and I think she helped a lot in that respect.
You're gaining some popularity on Twitter as well. So like, can you talk to me about that? Like, was it all from you just being on the show, or did you do anything specifically to try and grow that Twitter account? Because I think now you're sitting at over 33,000 followers.
Yeah, you know, I really didn't, and my audience mainly grew on Twitter, and this was before Instagram got big, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as big as the TV show was, I actually lost my role on the TV show through a tweet.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
So it got to a stage where they decided to move the show to another part of the country, and I'll never get my head around why, right? Because if it's not broke, don't fix it. But anyway, the show decided not to tell us. We had a Scottish head teacher come in the show 2 years prior to us finding out, so they knew all along what they were going to do, and we found out through the papers. So you can imagine, we come on set one day, and we've got papers in our hands telling us that the show's moving, and not one of the production decided to tell us. So obviously we reacted, and me being my 15-year-old self tweeted, you know, absolutely can't believe the show is moving to Scotland. There's no chance I'm going. So I pretty much made my own bed.
Mm-hmm.
And a coach crash came along where we all had to get out of the coach and take a picture as we're moving up towards this new place. School's moving. And out of everybody, the whole school, all the teachers, me being the nimblest, quickest guy, somehow manages to get hit by this coach. So, you know, I often question how I was the one that managed to get hit, but, you know, put two and two together, I guess I've made my own bed. And that's where I'd realized the power of social media, not
Mm-hmm.
only through me only losing my job on the show, but also the impact that one tweet had.